back. Barrister Obiorome, the issue of, let's say Barrister Deji, I think Barrister Obiorome spoke last. The issue of ASUU has been a continuous one. You know, we have series of ASUU strike in the past. In fact, we were even applauding this government that since they came into power, we've not had any ASUU strike. It has been checkmated. But then we've seen a 2-week warning strike by ASUU. Of course, they are saying that the 2009 agreement, which is reached between ASUU and the federal government, has not been implemented, and they are seeking for a renegotiation of those agreements. So, what is your take? Of course, Nigerians have complained that the funding for education there have not been any improvement, especially after the removal of the fuel subsidy. One would have thought that the budget for education would have skyrocketed, given the importance of education, in nation's development. So what is your take?
Well, let me first of all say that it's a shame that governments have refused to take their responsibility, in respect of education and their commitment also to the ASUU. Unfortunately, this has been a recurring decimal. Each time ASUU go on strike, you find traditional rulers, you find Nigerians coming to beg ASUU instead of talking to the government to do what they are supposed to do. And we are having it all over again. It's a shame that our educational system, our tertiary education is being dragged into this mess by the government, not ASUU. Most time people blame ASUU and over again. ASUU is going on strike too many times. But the truth of it is that why is it difficult for government to follow their own commitment and obligations agreed with ASUU? Why are they not implementing the agreement?
They said there's no money to...
but they have enough money for their own greed, for some of their own useless projects that they are doing. Government needs to sit, and we have just talked about bad government in the first session. This is another full of bad governance. Now, government have withdrawn completely all subsidies to education, tertiary education, even the primary education, and all of that. And a government that wants to build the manpower, human capital development, that wants to develop a nation, how can you develop when you are not interested in funding education? When the amenities and infrastructures in all your schools are in shambles? When people cannot afford the fees that they are paying in schools? Majority of Nigerians today cannot access education anymore just because of some of these bad policies that we are having. It's really unfortunate that the federal government has decided to leave ASUU in the limbo. Well, and I want to say this, I'm saying this maybe because I'm also a lecturer. We find it very funny that government will be paying so much to themselves, and those of us who are the ones that are training the people, some of us who are taking time to lecture students, to take care of students, nothing is done in terms of welfare. Do you know that a common local government chairman earns more than a professor in this country?
Obviously.
And it shouldn't be. Some of these illiterates you find in as councillors, they earn far more than the vice chancellors of universities. It shouldn't be that way. Their allowances are more than that of the vice chancellor of a university. So we need to sit down in the nation to address this persistent problem that we are imposing on ourselves.
Maybe because the federal government presumes that teaching profession is the labor.
No, they tell you that
the labor of law.
But they are all reward on earth. They keep changing their vehicles. They keep giving themselves allowances that are not worth it. So we need to sit down as a nation and address the question of power training and all that.
What's your take?
Yes, my take on the issue is that federal government needs to sit down and do more than what is being done in the education sector. First, federal government and ASUU entered into agreement in 2009, and government is a continuum, is a perpetuity. It doesn't matter who occupies the seat at any given point in time. And once an agreement is entered into between two or more parties, that agreement must be complied with. And ASUU has been complaining over time that the federal government has not complied with that 2009 agreement. And each time they come up, federal government will send the delegation and they will talk, say, don't worry, we will do something. They will release some funds. They will go back to classes and it has continued. It's not supposed to be so. It seems the government is not playing proper priority in education, and will be made to understand that the youths are the future of tomorrow. In fact, there's need to declare emergency in the educational sector. First, Nigeria as a nation is having a uncomfortable number of out-of-school children, which is not supposed to be. Now, when education subsidy was removed, tertiary institutions increased tuition and other fees payable in universities. The government brought in student loan, and that student loan, how many students can access it as compared with the number of students in the country? It is taking 100 naira from you and giving you 1 naira. It does not make economic sense. Return what was there before, so that education, which is fundamental and which is a right, because our laws say that the right to education is a right that inures to every Nigerian child, not just every African child. Is there in the African Charter? African Charter? Is there in the our laws? So it's important that government will do something radical to address the collapsing educational system. And again, when you look at the students that are seeking admission every year into tertiary institutions, compared with the number of places, vacancies that can be accommodated by the universities, it is very, the disparity is much. And every year, JAMB, that is not meant to be revenue generating for the government, every year declares billions collected from students seeking admission. It is very uncomfortable, and no nation can grow without stable, efficient educational sector. Now, if federal government will resolve the issue with ASUU as a matter of urgency, and then address the issue of education, because Nigerian students, after waiting for years without admission, go to neighboring African countries to get degrees, and recently some of those degrees have been found to be below standard, with the result that the federal government say no, we can't recognize degrees or certificates for the institutions.
All right.
Now, I remember that in the past, people from other countries, India, other countries, come to Nigeria to study.
All right. Of course, that.
Yes, I wanted to say quickly.
Yeah, but before you say quickly, yes. Of course, you could always say quickly. Let's also look at the student perspective, because yes, over the years we looked at the government and the ASUU perspective, the welfare. But one of the students who are caught in between this crossfire, of course, their perspective are often ignored. Are there plans by the federal government to compensate the students for academic time lost during this strike? Because of course, the mental health, the students who have to stay at home, are there plans to compensate the students?
Government will never have such plans. Government will never have such plans, because if they have it in the first instance, they will not have withdrawn the subsidy to education. And it's really unfortunate that Nigerian government, perhaps one of the most perfidious government in Africa. Seriously, you wonder what is the duty or responsibility of government in any state. They are abdicating their duty and responsibility. They don't want to fund housing, they don't want to fund education, they don't want to fund transport, they don't want to fund health. So what exactly is the responsibility of this government and all the loans they are collecting, all the money they are making as a nation? UNICEF had come up with a benchmark for education. UNICEF said any government in any third world that is serious about development must put at least 25% of its revenue annually into education. What is the revenue ratio that the federal government of Nigeria today is putting into the education of this country? It's not even up to 5% or 2% of the revenue of the country. So how can you expect to grow what economic impact can you make when your citizens are all illiterate? So the Nigerian government needs to sit down and really think about it. It's not just our National Assembly has become a place of drama and comedy rather than representation of the people. It's really and the executive to have abdicated their responsibility to the people.
All right, to just give you the facts, the revenue ratio is 7% for the year.
Oh, that's an advantage.
Advantage.
5 to 7. It was 5 to. It was
yeah, but
you
said 25.
25%.
So 25%.
Are you saying that 7% is
we have even had lesser percentage in the past years? So this government can say, well, we moved it from 5% to 7%.
Yeah, but it's still
a far cry.
It's still a far cry. That's the point we are making. It's still a far cry, and a serious government should look into that. Any serious government should look into it.
All right. Of course, the student perspective. There's no justice for the students whose academic timeline would have been truncated or cut short, disrupted in this process.
In a normal climb, where students have been made to stay out of school for no justification, they are expected to be compensated.
Because they will have to pay her. Some of them who are staying off care will have to pay their rent, and so many other things.
Yes, but in Nigeria, I don't see that coming soon. Let even the issue of the agreement to ASUU be resolved. Some students, some of our leaders, especially the politicians, their children are not schooling in Nigeria.
They don't school here.
They go overseas, send their students to schools abroad where there are no strikes. They finish and all that. Some of them even pay in advance. Yeah. But here, because their children are not there, they don't see it as a responsibility. They say responsibility they owe the nation, that the children that our laws say have a right to education, that education must be seamless. It must be qualitative education and must be timely. And the situation where, because of the wrong policies of government, students cannot access education, it is reprehensible in us particulars. We need to, as a nation, change the policy on education to totally, completely overhaul them and ensure that what is going on presently, which is injustice, is redressed.
All right, Mr. Deji, let's take you. What would you advise ASUU and federal government in order to resolve this issue as soon as possible, so that the student could go back to class?
I think the government, it all lies in the hands of the federal government. If they want to resolve the matter, they know what to do. Let them comply with that agreement. Unfortunately, the ASUU is talking about renegotiating when they have not even complied with the 2009 agreement. You know, I don't see how this government will renegotiate that agreement. What you just do is maybe look for a way to compel the government to carry out that obligation under that agreement. Because if you ask them to renegotiate, it will take them almost less.
When they not even comply with the first one.
So to talk about renegotiating, ASUU should just allow that to go.
So you mean that ASUU should allow that? Because when you check
they should
the purchasing power of what they are doing,
as at that time,
and as now, that wouldn't even be.
They are not even comply with that 2009 agreement. So to talk about a new agreement is far too asking for too much. As far as I'm concerned.
Okay, you mean that ASUU is asking for too much?
It will be like
the federal government.
It's not that they are asking. It's not that they are asking for too much, but from the government perspective, it is to them.
Yeah, but shouldn't they hold the government accountable? See, whoever knew
yes, government should be held accountable. But is this government ready to be accountable? Is this government ready to be accountable? That's the question.
Yeah, but you said the citizens have to insist on their right. That's what you said during the Madagascar.
Exactly.
ASUU not insist on their own right.
ASUU should, but if ASUU continue to increase, these guys are insensitive to the people's need, to the welfare of the Nigerian people. They're sensitive, and that's where we are now.
All right. So by government.
Yes, the proper posture on this is to stop what we've been witnessing over the years. And what is that? A fire brigade approach. Once ASUU comes and say, look, we have waited for too long, we are not getting what we are expected to be getting, we are no longer, we are now withdrawing our services. Government will, okay, let's arrange for something, give them. That is cosmetic solution to problems that have been persistent. The proper thing is to get down to the drawing table. Look at the 2009 agreement. Is this still realistic? What the Naira could get in 2000, is it the same thing today? If it's not, there's need to adjust it in the face of present day realities. And the government must stop this attitude of when ASUU or NLC wants to go strike, they quickly go to the court to get order to stop them from going to strike. It's wrong. People have the right to protest or go strike and say, look, we don't want to continue what we are saying. So government must, address the issue. So my final take on the two issues: for Madagascar, let African leaders learn their lessons and do the right thing. For the ASUU government, Embrigo, let the federal government address the issue and resolve that matter as a matter of urgency.
All right. Yeah, on Madagascar.
Obviously, on the Madagascar, African leaders should take cue and avoid bad governance.
All right.